The grand revolving doors of Thompson & Coder Jewelers whispered open with a soft whoosh, ushering in the cool evening air alongside a woman who seemed entirely out of place among the polished marble floors and gleaming glass display cases. Her name was Sarah Thompson, a 32-year-old art teacher from Portland, Oregon. She stood quietly for a moment just inside the store, adjusting the strap of her worn canvas backpack on one shoulder. Her fingers still speckled with dried paint from that afternoon's community art class. Her outfit, though clean, bore the marks of a long, meaningful day. A soft gray t-shirt, slightly smudged with blue and yellow acrylic, peeked out from under a light denim jacket. Her jeans faded at the knees, and old white sneakers told a story not of wealth, but of purpose. A gray and white trucker cap sat snug over her brown ponytail, shadowing her thoughtful eyes. Around her, luxury pulsed like a quiet symphony. A pianist in the corner played a soft, familiar rendition of Clair de Lune. Customers in tailored suits and cocktail dresses browsed the glittering display cases, sipping champagne offered by attentive staff. A sales associate glided past her with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, offering none. Sarah's presence didn't command attention, it challenged expectations. She took a breath and stepped toward the mahogany customer service desk. It stood high and gleaming, a centerpiece under a massive crystal chandelier that cast golden light like rain across the floor. She could feel the weight of tiredness in her shoulders. It had been a 10-hour day at the community center, helping kids express their struggles and hopes through paint and clay. The thought of driving the 2 hours back to her and her husband's countryside home near Mount Hood had felt unbearable. Just 30 minutes earlier, her husband, James Thompson, had called. His voice, always calm, always warm, had offered a simple solution. "Stay at the store's penthouse suite tonight, sweetheart. I'll have everything arranged." Sarah had insisted on keeping her independence, and James admired that. They didn't flaunt their marriage, and most of the staff probably didn't even know what she looked like. Still, as she reached the desk and was met by the sharp glances of the two sales associates, Sarah couldn't help but feel the pressure of being out of place. She smiled gently, steadying her voice. "Good evening," I began. "My name is Sarah Thompson. My husband should have called about a room for me." The man behind the desk, whose gold name tag read Brandon, offered a tight, polite smile. His eyes, however, drifted down to her clothes with barely concealed judgment. Next to him, a younger woman named Ashley offered no greeting at all. As Sarah stood her ground, the older gentleman who had been watching the scene unfold approached the desk. He was elegantly dressed in a suit that spoke of quiet wealth, with a silver-streaked beard and eyes that held a warmth missing from the receptionist's gazes. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, looking between Sarah and the receptionists. His voice was calm but firm, commanding attention without raising his voice. Brandon looked up, his expression instantly changing from dismissive to deferential. "No problem, Mr. Harrington. Just a small misunderstanding." Mr. Harrington turned to Sarah, his gaze kind. "I couldn't help but notice you seem to be having some trouble. Perhaps I can be of assistance?" Sarah, grateful for the unexpected ally, smiled at him. "Thank you, but I'm waiting for my husband. He should be here soon." Mr. Harrington raised an eyebrow. "Your husband, you say? And who might he be?" Before Sarah could answer, Brandon interjected. "She claims to be married to James Thompson, sir, but there's no record of a reservation, and we can't confirm the call." Mr. Harrington's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Then he chuckled. "Well, that explains it. You see, Brandon, James Thompson is an old friend of mine. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this misunderstanding." He turned back to Sarah, extending his hand. "I'm Charles Harrington. And you are?" "Sarah Thompson," she replied, shaking his hand. Mr. Harrington nodded, then addressed Brandon. "I suggest you check the records again, Brandon, and perhaps contact Mr. Thompson's office directly. I'm sure this can all be sorted out." Brandon, now looking flustered, began to tap away at his keyboard again. Ashley, meanwhile, had gone quiet, her earlier condescension replaced with a nervous look. As Sarah waited, she felt a sense of calm determination. She wasn't going to be dismissed or humiliated any longer. She was Sarah Thompson, and she deserved to be treated with respect, regardless of her appearance. Just then, the revolving doors swished open, and a familiar figure walked in. James Thompson, dressed in a tailored suit, looked around the lobby until his eyes found Sarah. He smiled, his face lighting up with warmth and relief. "Sweetheart," he said, striding towards her. "I'm so sorry I'm late. I had some trouble getting away from the office." He reached her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders and turning to the reception desk. "I assume there's been some trouble?" Brandon, now pale, stammered, "Mr. Thompson, sir, I apologize. We didn't realize. There was no record of a reservation." James waved a hand dismissively. "That's quite all right, Brandon. I'll make sure this doesn't happen again." He turned to Sarah, his eyes soft. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" Sarah smiled, her dignity intact. "I'm fine, James. Just another day in the life of an art teacher, I suppose." Mr. Harrington chuckled, drawing their attention. "I must say, James, your wife has a remarkable composure. I've never seen Brandon so flustered." James laughed, extending a hand to Mr. Harrington. "Charles, it's good to see you. I'm glad you were here to help Sarah." As the two men shook hands, Sarah felt a sense of vindication. She had held her ground, and in doing so, she had shown everyone in the lobby that she was more than just her clothes. She was Sarah Thompson, and she deserved to be treated with respect. James turned to Brandon and Ashley, his expression unreadable. "Would one of you care to explain why my wife is being treated like a common criminal in my own hotel?" Brandon stammered. "Mr. Thompson, sir, we had no idea she was your wife. She didn't look. She was dressed so casually, and she didn't have a reservation, and—" James cut him off with a sharp gesture. "I called ahead and arranged a room for her. I explicitly told you to expect her and treat her with the utmost respect." Ashley, looking paler by the moment, added, "We thought she was trying to scam us, sir. She looked so ordinary." James's eyes narrowed. "Ordinary? My wife is many things, but ordinary is not one of them. She is a remarkable woman who has dedicated her life to helping others. She is a Thompson, which should be enough to command your respect, regardless of what she's wearing." He turned back to Mike, who had released Sarah's elbow as soon as James had spoken. "I apologize for the misunderstanding, Mike. You were just doing your job, but I need you to step aside now." Mike nodded, looking relieved. "Of course, Mr. Thompson." James then addressed the crowd of onlookers. "I apologize for the disturbance, ladies and gentlemen. I assure you this will not happen again. Our staff will be reminded that every guest, regardless of their appearance, deserves to be treated with kindness and respect." He turned back to Sarah, his expression softening. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm fine, James. Just humiliated and angry." James took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You have every right to be, but I promise you this will not go unaddressed." He turned back to Brandon and Ashley, his voice cold. "You two are suspended, effective immediately. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in my hotels. We are in the business of hospitality, not judgment." Brandon and Ashley looked stricken, but they nodded, knowing better than to argue with James Thompson. James then led Sarah away from the desk, towards the elevators. As they walked, he kept her hand in his, offering a silent show of support. Sarah stood tall, her head held high, despite the tears that now streamed down her cheeks. Once they were in the elevator, James pulled her into a tight hug. "I am so sorry, Sarah. I never imagined something like this could happen in my own hotel." Sarah hugged him back, her body shaking with quiet sobs. "It's not your fault, James. You can't control every single person who works for you." James pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "No, but I can make sure they know better, and I will. I promise you that." As the elevator doors opened, revealing the penthouse suite, James led Sarah inside. He poured her a glass of wine, then sat down beside her on the couch, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. "I want you to know," he said, his voice firm, "that you are the most important person in my life. You are my wife, my partner, my best friend, and I am incredibly proud of who you are and what you do. No one, not my staff, not strangers in a lobby, has the right to make you feel small or insignificant." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. I know, James, and I love you for it, but I also know that this isn't over. The staff needs to be trained, the policies need to be reviewed, and the culture needs to change. James nodded, determination in his eyes. You're right, and I'm going to make sure that happens. Starting tomorrow, I'll personally oversee a complete overhaul of our staff training and customer service policies. We will not tolerate this kind of behavior again. Sarah smiled, leaning into his embrace. I know you will, James, because that's who you are, and that's why I love you. As they sat there together, Sarah knew that she had not just found her voice in that lobby, but she had also found a partner in her husband who would stand by her side, fighting for justice and equality, one hotel lobby at a time. You'll work directly with our marketing department to coordinate events and initiatives that engage with Portland's diverse communities. This will give you a chance to understand and appreciate the experiences of people from all walks of life. Ashley looked taken aback but nodded. Yes, Mr. Thompson. Finally, James turned to Mike. Mike, you're a good man. You were just following protocol, but I need you to understand that sometimes protocol can be wrong. I want you to work with our security team to review and update our guest removal policies. We need to make sure they're fair, respectful, and non-discriminatory. Mike stood up straighter, looking determined. Yes, Mr. Thompson, I won't let you down. James nodded, satisfied. Good. Now, I want all of you to report to HR first thing tomorrow morning. They'll have more details about your new roles and responsibilities. He looked around the room, his gaze landing on Sarah. She smiled at him, pride shining in her eyes. He had handled the situation perfectly, balancing accountability with growth and learning. One more thing, James said, turning back to the group. I want each of you to apologize to my wife. She's the one who was wronged here, and she deserves to hear it from you. Brandon, Ashley, and Mike turned to Sarah, their expressions contrite. One by one, they apologized. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson, Brandon said, his voice steady. I'm truly sorry for my behavior, Ashley added, her voice soft. Mike simply said, I apologize, ma'am. Sarah accepted their apologies with a nod and a quiet, thank you. James then dismissed them, asking them to leave and report to HR the next day. As they filed out of the office, he turned to Sarah, a small smile playing on his lips. You handled that beautifully, she said, standing up and walking towards him. He pulled her into a hug, resting his chin on top of her head. I had a good teacher, he murmured. She pulled back, looking up at him. You mean me? He nodded. You've always had this way of making people see the best in themselves. I just tried to do the same. She smiled, her eyes soft. Well, you did a great job. I'm proud of you. He kissed her forehead, then took her hand. Come on, let's get you that room and that glass of wine. As they left the office, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and hope. She had witnessed something truly special tonight. A man using his power and influence not to punish, but to teach, to grow, and to change. And she knew that this was just the beginning. Together, they would make sure that the Thompson Grand Hotel and all the hotels that followed would be a place where everyone was welcome, regardless of how they looked or where they came from. The next morning, James and Sarah had breakfast together in the hotel restaurant, discussing their plans for the day. James had several meetings and contracts to sign, while Sarah planned to visit a local art gallery and meet with friends from the artist community. After breakfast, they parted ways, and Sarah headed to the gallery. However, as she passed through the lobby, she noticed something had changed. The hotel staff seemed more attentive, more aware of the guests. They smiled and greeted guests, regardless of their appearance. She approached the reception desk, where she was met by the familiar face of receptionist Ashley. This time, Ashley seemed friendly and genuine. Good morning, Mrs. Thompson, she said. Can I help you with something? Sarah was surprised but pleasantly touched by such a warm welcome. Good morning, Ashley. I was just passing by and noticed that everything seems a bit different today. Something has changed? Ashley nodded. Yes, Mrs. Thompson. After yesterday's incident, Mr. Thompson held a meeting with the staff and explained how important it is to treat all guests with respect and kindness, regardless of their appearance or social status. He said that every guest deserves the same high level of service that we offer to our VIP guests. Sarah smiled. pleased that James had taken the situation so seriously. "That's wonderful, Ashley. I'm glad he took steps to address the situation." Ashley nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Thompson, and we're all grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow. I'm especially grateful to you for helping us understand the importance of being open and accepting." Sarah was touched by such words and felt that her efforts had not been in vain. She thanked Ashley and continued on her way to the gallery, feeling more optimistic about the future of the hotel and its staff. Over the next few days, James and Sarah worked to ensure that the changes in the hotel were permanent and that all staff understood the importance of treating all guests with respect. James held several meetings with the staff to discuss new policies and procedures, while Sarah helped develop training programs for the staff to better understand and serve guests from various cultures and social backgrounds. In the end, their efforts paid off. Guests began leaving positive reviews about their experiences, and the staff seemed happier and more motivated. James and Sarah were pleased to have created a more inclusive and friendly atmosphere in the hotel, and they knew that this was just the beginning of their work to create a more fair and equal world. And although they would face many new challenges and problems in the future, they knew that together they could overcome any obstacles and create positive change in the world around them. You'll be working with local nonprofits to connect our jewelry store with real people, folks who've never stepped inside a luxury boutique. Maybe when you hear their stories, you'll stop assuming things based on clothing or posture. Ashley, humbled, gave a quiet, "Yes, sir," barely above a whisper. Then James looked at Mike. "You followed protocol, but our protocol failed today, so you'll help rewrite it. Starting next week, you'll be working directly with our store manager to create new guidelines, ones that protect customers without profiling them." Mike, who had spent 15 years in security, looked James in the eye. "I appreciate that, sir. I really do." Sarah finally stood. She walked toward the three employees, not with anger, but with a gentle firmness that reflected years of guiding children through difficult emotions. "I'm not angry," she said. "I'm disappointed in a system that taught you that someone like me didn't belong here. But disappointment is a beginning, not an ending. If you're willing to grow, this could be the moment everything changes." James nodded in agreement. "One more thing. Each of you will spend a day volunteering at my wife's community art program. I want you to meet the children she serves. Some of them wear secondhand shoes. Some don't speak much English. Some don't have homes to go back to. But they are full of dignity, and they deserve to be seen." The room was quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear that filled the air. It was something else. Understanding. Hope. The first flickers of transformation. "This store," James added, "will no longer be known only for its sparkling diamonds or gold-plated displays, but for how it makes every customer feel seen, safe, and respected." And just like that, the real work began. 3 months had passed since that fateful evening in the lobby of the Thompson Jewelers, and the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah Thompson stood quietly in the same grand lobby where she had once been humiliated. But today, the atmosphere felt different, not just to her, but to everyone who walked through those doors. Across the room, Brandon, once stiff and judgmental, now stood behind the counter, speaking warmly to an elderly woman in a simple dress. Her hands were weathered, her shoes worn, but Brandon greeted her with the same respect he might have once reserved for a celebrity. He walked around the counter, offered her his hand, and personally escorted her to a comfortable chair with a smile. Sarah watched quietly, her lips curving into a proud smile. James appeared beside her, carrying a tray of coffee and pastries. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" he said softly. She nodded. "Night and day." "And the numbers back it up," James added. "Customer satisfaction scores are up 28% across the board. We're getting messages from people saying they've never felt more seen or valued in a jewelry store in their lives." What began as a personal reckoning had become a company-wide movement. The new initiative, Respect First, had rolled out across all 12 Thompson Jewelers locations in the U.S., with plans to expand internationally by spring. And the most surprising champion of the program? Brandon himself. "He's leading another training seminar this afternoon," James said. "Requested to take it to our New York flagship store next month." Sarah chuckled. I guess some people just needed a second chance and a little perspective. Near the entrance, Ashley emerged from the back office, walking beside a teenage girl in a wheelchair. Her eyes were nervous but bright. Ashley carried a folder with a staff badge. "Mrs. Thompson," she called out, guiding the young woman over. "This is Maria. She's starting her internship in our jewelry design workshop today." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Maria, I remember you from art class. You have an incredible eye for detail. You're going to do great in the workshop." James stepped forward, shaking the teen's hand. "Our master jeweler is already excited to meet you." After Ashley led Maria toward the workshop, Sarah's gaze shifted to the security desk. Mike, now head of customer safety and experience, stood tall in his new role. The store's security protocols had been rewritten entirely under his guidance, balancing customer safety with dignity. He now trained every new guard, using his own missteps as a teaching tool. James looked at his wife, a sense of quiet admiration in his expression. "It all started with you, you know." Sarah shrugged, linking her arm through his. "It started with a mistake, but we turned it into something better." As they walked toward the entrance, the new bronze plaque caught Sarah's eye. It read, "At Thompson Jewelers, we judge no one by appearance, but value everyone by their story, their dreams, and their unique spark." As the glass doors of Thompson Jewelers quietly slid open, Sarah and James Thompson stepped out onto the bustling city sidewalk. The sun cast a warm glow over the street, where people from all walks of life hurried about their day, some dressed in tailored suits, others in casual clothing, a few pushing strollers or wheelchairs. And in that moment, Sarah realized that the change they had sparked was no longer confined to the polished marble floors and sparkling display cases of the jewelry store. It had begun with a painful experience, one rooted in judgment, assumption, and subtle cruelty. But through accountability, compassion, and a refusal to meet ignorance with vengeance, something far greater had emerged. A cultural shift, a new kind of standard, one that didn't measure a customer by the cut of their coat or the size of their wallet, but by their shared human dignity and potential. Inside the store, the new bronze plaque gleamed under the soft lighting. Customers often paused to read it, some taking pictures, others simply nodding in agreement. The quote at the bottom, Sarah's favorite by Maya Angelou, read, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike." That single sentence had become the guiding light of the Respect First initiative, and it was working. Across the Thompson Jewelers chain from San Francisco to Miami, stories had begun to emerge. A single mother in Boston who was offered a private consultation with a jeweler to design a custom piece for her anniversary. A young man in Chicago, nervous and unsure, paired with a mentor from the store staff who helped him build confidence in his pursuit of a career in the arts. A teenager in Houston, struggling with anxiety, offered a quiet place to rest and a listening ear by a compassionate sales associate. Even customers were different now. The very incident that had once drawn hushed whispers in the grand lobby of the jewelry store had inspired honest reflection among longtime patrons. Mrs. Hartley, the elegant woman who had tried, though timidly, to speak up that night 3 months ago, had become one of the initiative's biggest supporters. That afternoon, she approached Sarah and James as they stood by the entrance, her step purposeful, her smile warm. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," she began, "I wanted to thank you for what you stood for that night. I've been a customer of this store for years, but this is the first place I've ever seen with a heart." Sarah, caught off guard, blinked. "Thank you, Mrs. Hartley. That means a lot to us." Mrs. Hartley continued, "My grandson, he's a talented musician, you know. He's always been a bit shy, always worried about what others think. But after hearing about your initiative, he started volunteering at the Community Arts Center. He says it's changed his life." Sarah smiled, emotion flickering across her face. She looked over at James, who reached for her hand. "This was never just about one jewelry store," Sarah said as they stepped outside. "It was about what happens when people are treated with kindness and fairness. Those little moments ripple outward. You never know whose life you're affecting." James nodded, his voice quiet. "And all because one woman walked into a jewelry store in paint-splattered jeans and refused to be judged by her appearance. They paused at the corner, watching a young street artist sketching portraits with charcoal. Sarah approached him, complimented his technique, and struck up a conversation about shading and light. And just like that, another connection was made, another quiet moment of respect in a world that desperately needed more of it. This story serves as a powerful reminder that dignity isn't defined by appearance, wealth, or status. It's something every human being inherently deserves. Sarah Thompson, a humble art teacher, was judged harshly based on her clothes rather than her character. But through calm strength and integrity, she not only stood her ground, but helped spark a cultural shift in an entire organization. For those of us who've lived through decades of change, social, cultural, and personal, this story touches a familiar truth. We've all seen how easily people are dismissed for looking different or less than. Yet as we age, we learn that true worth lies in compassion, respect, and how we treat others when no one is watching. This lesson is timeless. Whether you're welcoming someone into your home, interacting with a stranger in a waiting room, or mentoring the next generation, remember, a kind word and an open mind can go farther than we ever imagine. In a world quick to judge, choosing dignity for ourselves and others may be the most powerful legacy we leave behind.